One of the most impressive comebacks during the Olympics was Quincy Hall coming back from fourth place to win the 400-meter final. We're going to go ahead and break that down, give you a little bit more information about what happened, what he was able to do in that last 100-meter to make it so he was able to come back and get the victory. We're going to hop right into it here. So we can see coming around the curve, kind of the positioning that the athletes are in. I mean, on this one here on the left, we can see it a little bit better. So we have Matthew Hudson Smith, who is really probably the favorite going into it. He's out in front. We also have a Dream Richards out here as well, and then also even Karani James. The first thing I want to talk about here is just the splits, because it's really not a race where you can hold or save yourself till the end, right? So Quincy Hall, he ran 11 seconds in the first 100, and then he ran sub 10 in the second, so he ran a 21-second 200. Which is really fast in itself, really impressive in itself. I know a lot of the top guys are running sub 20s, but even running in the 21s for 400 is really impressive. A lot of these guys, like Matthew Hudson Smith, ran 2062, and so they're not by any means saving themselves. They're running fast. And then on that curve, he ended up running 1081, so it's at 31.81 going into that last 100. And I think even running that curve in a sub 11 second is an impressive feat in itself. And then the last, and this is what I think really separates the top athletes when it comes to running this 400, the last 100 was 12 seconds. And I think getting under 13 seconds for men is really something that is the goal that you need to be able to get to. So he started at 31.81 and he ended up running a 43.40 in that 100 meters. So to go into some of the things that he was doing in comparison to maybe what some of the other guys were not doing or not doing as well. First thing we could see, he's got a lot more head movement. Like Matthew Hudson Smith, again, Dream Richards, they are a lot more kind of locked in with the head, where we could see Quincy Hall is doing a lot more head movement side to side. And this is something I usually actually try to coach out of people, is too much head movement, just because I think there could be some instability that ends up happening when athletes are doing this. But when you watch this here, obviously this is the new fastest, new Olympic champion that is really using a lot of his head side to side, head movement side to side to make it so he's gaining speed. I saw this a lot with Xavier Worthy too. When he ran the new 40-yard dash record, he had a lot of kind of head bob side to side. And we also see this with Sha'Carri Richardson. She has a good amount of head movement side to side. So it is something that I've been a little bit more open to recently. And then another thing too is, and you could really see this on the side view, where he's really reaching out with his hands. Like look at that left arm, left hand. He's really getting out in front, where again, we'll look at Dream Richards, but all these guys are a lot closer with their hands. And to me, that makes it so you end up getting a lot more of like a vertical action with the hand. And again, I don't think this is something that is wrong. It's just something to take note of and to understand and potentially apply to your own sprinting. People always be like, oh, is this wrong? Is this right? When I'm going over different mechanics. And there's not necessarily a wrong or right. It's just, what is it that you're trying to accomplish within your sprinting mechanics is something that I think is an important thing to understand, because what you essentially get when you're running a little bit more like Dream Richards, a little bit shorter arm swing, a little bit more vertical arm swing, is typically a little bit faster turnover speed, a little bit quicker foot contact time, which could be beneficial when it comes to running the 400, especially if you are a taller athlete or struggling with having too long a foot contact, which a lot of times ends up being the issue when you are going through that last 100. And so he didn't do great here. Dream Richards didn't have a great finish, but again, understanding the importance of where you're doing within the mechanics, within your sprinting mechanics, is important, because now when you look at Quincy Hall and he has that big kind of long position, what that's going to do is that's going to allow him to get a little more air time and be a little bit more horizontal with his movement pattern, where Dream Richards is going to be a little bit more vertical, straight up. And then again, we're going to get more verticality here. And that's what really, horizontal movement here with Quincy Hall. And that's what stood out here, is when we slow down Quincy Hall with Matthew Hudson Smith, is we're getting a very different amount of range per step. So you could make the argument that he is a little bit longer with his foot contact time, Quincy Hall is, but he's just covering more distance on each one of his steps, right? So we're seeing him strike the ground here. They're about the same. He's a little bit earlier, towing off about the same time. They're pretty similar in terms of the foot contact. Here's a good one. Yeah, that pretty much shows that Matthew Hudson Smith's probably a little bit faster, or maybe they're about the same. But now we can see when their foot hits back on the ground, Matthew Hudson Smith touches a little bit sooner. And this is where you could really start to see Quincy Hall is just getting more distance on each one of these steps. So now how is he doing it? I think a lot of it has to do with that arm swing, how he's really reaching with his foot out in front. I also think some of the action he's getting out of the head ends up being important. I also think that some of the positioning that he's getting within his backside mechanics, you can see he's very long within his backside mechanics, and he's very forward with his hips. I mean, he's doing a great job, and part of this might be genetics, part of this just might be some of the training, but he's doing a great job maintaining a very forward lean within the hips, but still is able to get his leg out in front of him, so he's able to stay very balanced. Like, he's so long back there in that backside. Look at how much height he's getting with his feet. Like, typically you see somebody do something like that, and they're almost going to fall over, or could potentially fall over or kind of stumble, where he's doing this and it's still able to get his knee out in front and get control back of his foot. And I think the only way he's doing that is because he's doing so much extra movement with his head and with his arms that he's giving himself a little bit more time to be able to get his foot out in front and be able to stay balanced and controlled. Because again, typically you would see something like this, if like Matthew Hudson Smith is doing this, I think he would be falling off balance. He wouldn't be able to control it, especially because of how limited his front side mechanics are. But again, we see with Quincy Hall, he's able to maintain it because of some of the extra action he has with the arms, with the head. And that's why I'm saying that I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing to have in your sprinting mechanics to make it so then it can carry over to a effective finish, right? Because that's really the main thing that I think you want to take away from when watching Quincy Hall run is really what did he do in the finish to be able to get there. I mean, when you go back and you watch the other parts of the race, the first 100, he was in 6th place in 11 seconds. Again, by no means is he jogging here, but Dream Richards on the outside won, running at 10:69. And so you can't really look at it and be like, oh, yeah, he did a great job with that. You can see Dream Richards really opened up. I think he even ran a better second part of this here. What is it? 20:46. So he was in first place at the 200-meter mark and then just started to lose it there at the end. When it comes to your strategy, you want to be able to stay with the guys that are in first place, top 3, whatever. And then on this last curve, just be able to maintain both length in your steps as well as fast foot contact time. Because a lot of times when I'll be breaking down athletes that are running the 400, I'll see way too long foot contact time, which a lot of times has to do with what are you doing with your plyometrics, how's your single leg stabilization, how's your balance on one leg, things like that, or even how's your body control, where are you landing on your foot, and make adjustments from there. And then when it comes to distance per step, it's a lot of times just the strength of the upper glute, the strength of the lower back, the ability to maintain the core, the ability to maintain a good forward lean. And then also, what are we doing with the arms? If you're too quick with the arms, there's a lot of correlation between what you're doing with the arms and what you're doing with the legs. So being able to get that long arm swing is going to make it so then you could open up that stride a little bit more as well. So just something to be able to consider when you are training for your own 400 and going through that last 100 of the 400, or the last 200 of the 400, or that last 150. These are all good things to be able to be considering and training to make it so then you can get the same type of performance, or at least something close to the same performance. So if you like the information, click that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and we have a couple of the videos that are some other races. We'll do the men's 100 and the men's 200, so you guys can check out some of the mechanics that has to do with a little bit more of the top end sprinting. But here we're going to do the 400 again. Quincy Hall, very impressive finish here, and definitely something that you want to be able to replicate. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.